Premiering on October 25th, 1978, John Carpenter's Halloween became one of the most successful independent films of all time. On a budget of $300,000, the film would gross over $47 million in its initial theatrical run, being praised for its simplicity and atmosphere, and considered to be one of the scariest films of its time. The simple idea of a murderous stalker sneaking into your home at night being at the forefront of audiences' minds in the 1970s. The film also has become one of the most influential in cinema history, inspiring a generation of filmmakers and horror movie fans, and forever ingraining itself in our pop cultural zeitgeist. Of course, Halloween's explosive success gave birth to a franchise that, against all odds, continues to thrill audiences to this day. However, like any proper horror movie franchise, the series is not without its flaws and inconsistencies, and some of the films play better today than others. But, unlike many other horror sagas, the Halloween films seem to be among the most devoted to their originator. After the success of 1981's Halloween 2... No, not that one. Producer John Carpenter and his late wife and producing partner Deborah Hill would only agree to return to Halloween as long as it was not a direct sequel to the Michael Myers storyline, having grown creatively disenchanted with the character. This change in vision would lead the filmmakers down quite a different path. More on that in a bit. And, unfortunately, the creative risk of Halloween 3 would not pay off, and ultimately its failure would send the franchise to what at the time seemed like an early grave. However, much like Michael Myers himself, the series would not lay dormant for long, and while there was no shortage of alternatives, 6 years later audiences were still craving the return of their favorite masked killer.
Michael? You waited 10 years. Why now? Don't go to Haddonfield. But leave those people in peace, please. Michael.
Every day is Halloween at Jamie's house, right, Jamie? Because your uncle's the boogeyman. Boogeyman! Boogeyman! Jamie's uncle's the boogeyman!
About Jamie Lloyd?
Wherever she is, that little child is in mortal danger.
Myers has been locked up since before she was born. He's never laid eyes on her.
6 bodies, Sheriff! That's what I've seen! I tell you, Michael Myers is here, in this town! He's here to kill that little girl and anybody who gets in his way.
Give the troopers a chance to search.
You're talking about him as if he were a human being. That part of him died years ago.
Made on a budget of just $5 million, Halloween 4: The Return of Michael Myers is, at times, a little rough around the edges and perhaps lacks some of the subtlety and restraint on display in the original film. However, while the road through production would be a bumpy one, the film ushered in a new era of the franchise, and although fans are generally split on the direction it would take, Halloween 4 stands out among the later sequels as the one perhaps truest to the spirit of the original, and in October 1988, promised to bring back fans for another fun and deadly Halloween in Haddonfield.
Welcome to hell.
on, get out. Get out now. It's time, Michael.
Released in October 1981, Halloween 2 became a huge success for producers Moustapha Akkad and John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, grossing over $25 million on a $2.5 million budget. While generally well received by fans, many viewers criticized the film for its more violent and bombastic approach to the material, although it has since gone on to become a fan favorite. However, despite its financial success, Carpenter and Hill were creatively finished with the Michael Myers-Laurie Strode storyline and chose to repackage the franchise as an anthology series, intending to release a Halloween-themed film each October. Each of the planned entries intended to eventually generate their own sequels and spin-offs. And while this may have seemed like a smart business move at the time, and may also have helped avoid further creative burnout, the producers underestimated the feverish popularity of their own property, and would quickly find out that Halloween could not survive without a knife.
Stop it! Halloween.
The world's going to change tonight, Doctor. Happy Halloween.
Stop it!
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, the night no one comes home.
Released only 1 year after Halloween 2, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch told the story of a doctor and a murdered man's daughter investigating a Halloween mask manufacturer, laying out an insidious plot involving trick-or-treating and the dark magic of Stonehenge. While the film was financially profitable, earning $14.4 million in total on a $2.5 million budget, it was the lowest grossing Halloween film up to that point, and received mostly negative reviews. Many critics left scratching their heads as to why the producers would abandon Michael Myers in the first place. Although the film has amassed a cult following in recent years, many now finding its quirkier elements more charming than audiences did in 1982, Season of the Witch was also poorly received by fans of the time, and would ultimately gain a legacy of embarrassment, the producers now considering the film to be a major mistake.
Do you mind if I borrow these?
If you thought one was fun, wait till you do two. Fright Night 2.
1988 would seemingly be the year of horror movie sequels.
He did the Monster Mash. The Monster Mash. It was a great...
Following the disappointment of Halloween 3, legendary producer Moustapha Akkad felt the time was right to make a return to the heart of the franchise, hoping to reinvigorate fans by bringing back a familiar face. However, at the time, there was little interest among the Halloween creative team to pursue another installment, and no one was quite sure just how they could bring Michael Myers back to the silver screen.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. The buzz is back.
Early on in development, the Cannon Group, yes, that Cannon Group, fresh off the success of their Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel, reached out to John Carpenter and Deborah Hill to write and produce a fourth Halloween film that would bring back the character of Michael Myers, Cannon hoping to option the franchise as they had done with Texas Chainsaw. Despite initial reservations, Carpenter and Hill agreed to revive the Myers storyline and hired their close friend and writer, the late Dennis Etchison, to pen the script. Etchison had previous writing experience in the Halloween franchise, as he had authored the novelizations of both Halloween 2 and 3 under the pseudonym of Jack Martin, but came with little screenwriting experience. Etchison and Carpenter envisioned the story focusing on the citizens of Haddonfield and exploring how the events of the first two films impacted the community, which would include the townspeople implementing a ban on Halloween itself. The script also introduced a ghostly element into the Myers mythos, bringing Michael back as a deadly apparition. The film would also feature young adult versions of Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace, the two children Laurie babysat in the 1978 original, Michael's spiritual return forcing the friends to confront their childhood trauma. At one point, Carpenter had approached Gremlins and The Howling director Joe Dante to helm the film. Carpenter being uninterested in returning to the director's chair himself. However, canon executives Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus were not satisfied with Etchison's script, which he described as a more cerebral approach to the story, and lacked the physical presence of Michael Myers, which series producer Mustafa Akkad also felt was key to the franchise's survival. Unable to reconcile their creative differences, Carpenter and Hill chose to depart the project. With little desire to revisit the series ever again, Carpenter ultimately sold all rights to the Halloween franchise over to producers Mustafa Akkad and his son Malik, who would see to it that The Shape would terrify audiences once again. Dennis Etchison, who lost a Writers Guild arbitration over the film's writing credit, would remain bitter about his work on Halloween 4, having been the first writer on the project, but receiving no credit on the final film. Akkad had learned from the failure of Season of the Witch that they needed to stick to the formula established by the original film, a simple and unflinching slasher focusing on one guy with a knife going after a group of kids and anyone else who stands in his way. However, following the departure of Carpenter and Hill, the production would suffer yet another blow when original star Jamie Lee Curtis announced that she would not be returning to the franchise. Curtis's career had skyrocketed following the success of the first two films, and she wasn't interested in returning to the horror genre at that time. Rather than recast, Akkad chose to kill off the character of Laurie Strode altogether and instead refocused the new story on her daughter. While the film would move forward with a new heroine for Michael to torment, Akkad knew that he couldn't make Halloween 4 without Dr. Samuel Loomis. Following the first two films, Donald Pleasence would see a prolific career resurgence in the 1980s, also making a return to the horror genre the previous year in John Carpenter's apocalyptic thriller Prince of Darkness. However, while Pleasence was committed to the concept of reprising one of his most memorable roles, knowing full well he had gained a legion of horror fans, the veteran actor insisted on reading the finished script before agreeing to star. Ohio native Dwight H. Little would be hired to direct the film and guide the overall development of the story and script. Little was not only a devoted fan of the first two Halloween films, but also came with experience in the horror genre, having directed several episodes of the then upcoming TV anthology series Freddy's Nightmares. Little had also directed another feature film that same year, the Indian-American production Bloodstone, which would be released just 2 weeks prior to Halloween 4. Despite some of the tumultuousness that would occur on the set of Halloween 4's production, Little and Akkad would go on to form a close and respectful working relationship, sharing many of the creative decisions. In February 1988, Little partnered with his then frequent collaborator and friend, writer Alan B. McElroy, to craft the script, and the creative partners would find themselves racing against an impending Hollywood writers' strike scheduled to begin in early March, leaving the pair just 11 days to finish the screenplay. McElroy and Little had, at first, envisioned a more grounded approach to the story, wanting to portray Michael as a mere escaped mental patient who was simply trying to make an emotional connection with Jamie, but lacked the capacity for true feelings, ultimately resulting in another murderous rampage. However, Akkad not only wanted to maintain the seemingly superhuman qualities of the character, but in fact enhance them, and the writers were forced to redevelop the script. After weeks of development and multiple drafts, and at the end of the last day before what would become the longest writer's strike in the industry's history, the duo presented to the Akkads a chilling and suspenseful return to the Myers-Strode storyline, playing more heavily into the supernatural elements of the lore, and also acting as a soft reboot of the franchise. The producers were extremely impressed with McElroy and Little's vision, and decided to move forward with the script. After actor Donald Pleasence was given a copy of McElroy and Little's screenplay, Akkad learned that he would thankfully see the return of Dr. Samuel Loomis once again in Halloween 4. Akkad loved the script so much that a decade later he would utilize an unused schoolhouse chase scene from the film's climax, originally removed for budgetary purposes, for 1998's Halloween H2O. While the original film had been shot in and around Pasadena, California, producer Paul Freeman was brought on board by the Akkads to plan an efficient and frugal production, and Freeman suggested bringing the shoot to Salt Lake City, Utah. The city not only contained a large pool of actors and crew members, but would also be significantly cheaper than shooting around Los Angeles, where production costs were on the rise. The city also featured many neighborhoods and rural vistas that perfectly matched those of a small Midwestern town. Little and the Akkads agreed that Salt Lake City would be their new Haddonfield. Little and the producers were ready to move forward with principal photography, which would begin on April 11, 1988 in Salt Lake City. While filming would move quickly, the production would be plagued by technical mishaps and behind-the-scenes drama, while director Dwight H. Little hoped to deliver the return to Haddonfield the fans were eagerly waiting for. Set 10 years after the events of Halloween 2, on the night of October 30th, 1988, an ambulance escorts a seemingly comatose Michael Myers from Ridgemont Federal Sanitarium to Smith's Grove. And after learning of the existence of his young niece, the unstoppable killer springs to life and slaughters the ambulance crew. Early on Halloween morning, little Jamie Lloyd awakens to a nightmarish vision of her estranged uncle attacking her. Now living in Haddonfield with the Carruthers family, Laurie Strode having been killed years earlier in an auto accident, Jamie is taunted at school for her infamous family history and struggles to cope with the loss of her mother and the hellish visions of what she calls the Nightmare Man. Later that morning, Dr. Samuel Loomis investigates the scene of the dumped ambulance. Authorities dubious that Michael Myers, presumed to be an invalid, was the cause. However, Loomis speculates that the Shape is making a return to Haddonfield once again and hurries to meet him. Michael kills an auto mechanic. Loomis arrives at the station soon after. Loomis is startled by the mechanic's body, the film restoring Michael's flair for the theatrics, and spots the Shape, firing off his pistol. Of course, however, the seemingly omnipotent killer once again manages to escape, the station lit ablaze in the process. After school, Jamie's foster sister Rachel takes her to a local convenience store to buy a Halloween costume. Rachel also breaking the news to her boyfriend/convenience store clerk Brady that she has been forced to babysit that night and would have to cancel their date. Meanwhile, Jamie chooses a clown costume off the rack, echoing the one worn by a young Michael in the 1963 murder of his older sister. However, while there, Jamie has a very real encounter with her uncle, who has now found a suitable mask. Jamie alerts Rachel, who rushes to her aid, but she dismisses the incident as another one of Jamie's hallucinations. Later at home, the Carruthers head out for the evening, and Jamie suits up for trick-or-treating. Unaware, a prowling Michael lurks nearby.
Is Brady there?
McElroy and Little had written a dramatic opening sequence recreating the climax of Halloween 2, this time seeing Dr. Loomis being blown away from the explosion, more clearly explaining his survival. However, the producers felt it was important to start the story off fresh and get to Michael killing as quickly as possible. McElroy and Little also wanted to maintain the more serious tone of the 1978 classic, not wanting to become entangled in continuity hell by directly referencing the ending of Halloween 2, and hoped audiences would simply be appreciative of a return to form. Due to budgetary restrictions, Halloween 4 would be the first Halloween film to be shot in a 1:8:5:1 aspect ratio, as opposed to the first three films' wider presentations. Nonetheless, it was critical to capture the look and feel of Midwestern Haddonfield at Halloween, and due to having to film in the springtime, the production was forced to import fall leaves to create the illusion of autumn, as well as bringing in large squash, which doubled as the film's pumpkins after being painted orange. Little also studied many older Halloween traditions and lore, and used this creepy imagery in the film's art direction, visually enhancing the spooky atmosphere. In earlier drafts, Laurie Strode's daughter was named Brittany Lloyd, who, as in the final version, would be living with the Carruthers family after Laurie's death. Brittany's name would later be changed to Jamie as an homage to actor Jamie Lee Curtis. For the part of Laurie Strode's 7-year-old daughter, the filmmakers knew they needed a child actor who would be able to withstand the more frightening and gruesome moments throughout the film, and would see multiple actors for the role, including a young Melissa Joan Hart. Ultimately, however, they found themselves going all the way to New York City to find their Jamie, casting 11-year-old Danielle Harris in the role, marking Halloween 4 as her feature film debut. For Rachel Carruthers, Little wanted to break away from the typically glamorous casting of 1980s teen screams, hoping to bring in authentically small-town feel to the character, someone who the audience would easily sympathize with. 25-year-old Long Island native Ellie Cornell had found some success on the short-lived TV series 30-something, as well as a brief role in the 1988 Michelle Pfeiffer comedy Married to the Mob, before landing her first starring role in Halloween 4. Prior to joining the production, Cornell had also auditioned for the then upcoming fourth Nightmare on Elm Street installment, but didn't receive the part. Danielle Harris and Ellie Cornell would be on set for a total of 36 of the 41 days of principal photography, and Cornell and her young co-star would form a close bond over the course of production. After hitching a ride with an eccentric preacher, Loomis arrives at the Haddonfield police station and convinces a reluctant Sheriff Meeker that Michael Myers has come home once again. With Halloween night in full swing, Jamie and Rachel make their way door to door, but Rachel soon discovers Brady in the company of his flirtatious co-worker Kelly, the sheriff's daughter, and loses track of Jamie during the confrontation. Meanwhile, the townspeople of Haddonfield learn of a sudden citywide quarantine, and after failing to reach the sheriff's station to find out why, a group of barfly vigilantes decide to take matters into their own hands. Elsewhere, Michael kills a power company technician, leading to a neighborhood-wide power outage. Rachel finds Jamie after a close call with the Shape, and Loomis and Meeker take the two to safety, Michael not far behind. In this scene, they also do the whole some asshole dressed as Michael thing we first saw in Halloween 2, except this time it's a whole gang of them, and also no one dies horribly. After Loomis and Meeker find the police station ransacked and most of Meeker's squad brutally killed, Loomis sends the vigilante mob after Michael, and Sheriff Meeker decides to shelter Jamie and Rachel at his own home, where they also find Kelly and Brady totally not making out at all. Deputy Logan soon arrives and Meeker arms Brady with a double-barrel shotgun. The group secures all points of entry, anticipating Michael's assault, and Meeker radios State Patrol for backup. Loomis decides to cover more ground and heads out to the Carruthers household to wait for Michael, unaware that the group has already been found. Cinematographer Peter Lyons Collister excellently emulates the look of night essential to the original film's suspense and overall air of dread. Shooting at night can be a tricky affair, the old day for night method being sorely outdated and rarely done convincingly. Here, Collister employs the use of colorful lighting popularized in genre films of the 1980s, using reds, blues, and oranges that add a level of stylization to the frame and ultimately elevate the film as a whole. And while the film excels in its photography, unfortunately, the film's makeup department would not leave the production of Halloween 4 unscathed. Makeup technician Ken Horn, who had previously helped craft the original Myers mask at the legendary Don Post Studios, was tasked with molding a new face for the Shape. Horn hoped to reuse the face of the first mask, famously that of Star Trek's William Shatner, in order to make a proper return for the character. However, the franchise doesn't exactly have the best track record when it comes to Michael's mask. And sadly, Halloween 4 would only continue this tradition. While the film's poster would feature the familiar mask worn in the 1978 film, the Myers mask used for Halloween 4 would look nothing like the Shatner-inspired original. Just as principal photography began, Horn received a box of 6 masks that not only lacked Shatner's likeness, but also had skin pinkish in tone and hair that was so blonde it was nearly white. With no time to spare, Horn was forced to repaint the masks white by hand and re-dye the hair, the paint leading to a distinctly bumpy texture on the mask's surface. The mask would continue to see minor alterations throughout production, and at one point during shooting, Horn would experience a major clash with the producers over a last-minute request to alter the size of the mask's eye openings. The very public argument resulted in Horn being fired by the producers on the spot in front of cast and crew. However, Horn happened to be the friend of a major contributor to Fangoria magazine, who quickly contacted the producers after hearing word of Horn's firing and threatened to cease all promotion of the film if Horn was not rehired. The next day, the producers apologized to Horn and he was immediately reinstated. Unfortunately for Horn, he would find yet even more trouble when it came to the makeup worn by actor Donald Pleasence. Wanting at the very least to acknowledge the explosive ending of Halloween 2, the producers chose to portray Loomis with burn scars on the right side of his body. While Pleasence agreed to add the makeup, one day during shooting somebody pointed out to the thespian that it looked like he had a fried egg splattered across his cheek. This comment worried Pleasence and the producers, and the scar makeup was quickly redesigned and all of Pleasence's scenes thus far were reshot. Unfortunately for Horn and his team, a mix-up in the editing process led to several shots of the fried egg makeup ending up in the final print, and Loomis's scars noticeably changed shape throughout the film. Following the humiliating experiences of working on Halloween 4, Ken Horn would choose to retire from the industry. Michael begins his attack on the helpless household, impaling Kelly with a shotgun. Rachel, Jamie, and Brady are cornered on the staircase, and Brady fends off Michael while the sisters escape to the attic. Michael quickly disposes of Brady and pursues Jamie and Rachel to the top of the house, where they attempt to block the attic entrance, buying them little time. With nowhere else to run, they escape onto the rooftop, Michael not far behind. Jamie escapes down the lattice, but Rachel is forced to drop from the gutter before Michael can swipe her, landing unconscious on the grass below. In an earlier draft of the script, Sheriff Meeker was to confront Michael in the home's basement, leading to Meeker's death and a raging furnace fire. The flames and smoke would be what drive Jamie and Rachel to the roof of the house where Michael confronts them. The harrowing rooftop sequence was actually shot on a 2-scale reconstruction of the house's roof, which stood about 6 feet from the ground and was staged in the middle of a large field. This not only made it safer for the actors, of course, but allowed the filmmakers to avoid using a green screen in order to capture a more realistic aesthetic for the shots. With Rachel decapacitated, Jamie is forced to flee on her own and soon runs into Dr. Loomis, who decides to seek shelter at the elementary school. However, the pair are quickly ambushed by the Shape, who tosses Loomis through a glass door. Luckily, Rachel comes to and surprises Michael with a fire extinguisher, she and Jamie then fleeing the scene. They run into the vigilantes outside of the school, who offer to take them to safety. Or so they think. At one moment during this sequence, it is painfully obvious that the stunt actor isn't wearing Michael's iconic white mask, but instead dons one of the leftover pink and blonde masks initially received by Ken Horn and the makeup department. Director Dwight H. Little later stated that the wrong mask was accidentally brought on set during filming on that night, and the cast and crew were simply too exhausted and too pressed for time to find the correct mask. Little said that, in retrospect, with more time and money, he would have gone back and reshot the character wearing the correct prop. With the state police on their way, the men drive the sisters outside city limits. However, unbeknownst to them, Michael has stowed away beneath the truck, and the killer soon emerges to finish what he started. Rachel regains control of the truck and slams the brakes, throwing Michael from the vehicle. As he gets up, Rachel strikes Michael head on, knocking him off the road. Jamie curiously approaches her uncle's body, touching his burned hand. However, Michael once again comes to life, but the police quickly intervene and, well, blow Michael away. Rachel and Jamie are reunited with the Carruthers, and Dr. Loomis is relieved to see the nightmare finally over. However, while her foster mother draws a bath, we see a masked assailant grabbing a large pair of scissors and hear Mrs. Carruthers scream as she is being attacked. Loomis races to the stairs and, to his horror, finds a bloody Jamie wielding the scissors, the clown mask pulled over her face. Loomis hollers as Meeker tackles the gun from his hand, the nightmare beginning all over again. When Michael is executed by the police, the script originally included the officers then dropping sticks of dynamite into Michael's grave, which, like the school desk sequence, would be cut due to budgetary constraints. Like that other sequence, the Akkads would repurpose the unshot scene to be a part of the opening of Halloween 5. Stunt coordinator Fred Lerner recommended actor and stuntman Tom Morga to embody the shape, taking over from original Michael Myers actor Nick Castle. While Morga would shoot multiple scenes as the character, many of which remain in the final film, he would be replaced by stunt actor George P. Wilbur midway through production, a casualty of the heated argument between the producers and makeup head Ken Horn. The primary reason Horn and Morga didn't want to adjust the eye openings of the mask as requested by the producers is due to the required adhesive necessary for the black screens over the eyes not having enough time to safely dry, which could have resulted in Morga passing out from the fumes and possibly even injuring himself. Morga sided with Horn against the producers, and while Horn was quickly brought back following Fangoria's intervention, the producers stubbornly refused to rehire Morga. Akkad handpicked Wilbur himself to take on the mask, wanting someone of an imposing stature in the role and also finding Wilbur's natural gait perfect for the ghostly stalker. While Wilbur stood at over 6 feet tall and with broad shoulders, he still was given hockey pads to wear under his costume to make him appear as an even more powerful physical threat. Director Dwight H. Little also chose to shoot Wilbur extensively through reflections and quick flashes, as well as framing him off-center in order to maintain the character's mysterious and twisted presence. Also, much like the original, Michael is frequently shot at a distance. Wilbur would also go out of his way to ensure his much younger co-star, Danielle Harris, was always comfortable during the scenes they shared, making a point to remove his mask as much as possible to remind her that they were just pretending. Wilbur would go on to portray the shape 2 more times in both 1989's Halloween 5 and again in 1996's The Curse of Michael Myers. Dwight Little and casting directors Paul Bankston and David Cohn would bring a near-perfect cast to Halloween 4, many of the actors also performing most of their own stunts. Ellie Cornell actually cut an area of her stomach open while filming the rooftop escape, sliding across an exposed nail. While after hospital examination, Cornell was permitted to continue filming, according to Danielle Harris, she would lose a significant amount of blood while completing the scenes. Despite being from New York, Cornell embodies the role of a young Midwestern teenager and brings an innocence to the character that, like Little had intended, wins the audience's sympathy from the start. The subplot of her relationship woes, while a little underdeveloped and unnecessary to the main story, does work to further highlight Rachel's vulnerability. Despite being nearly 70 years old, Donald Pleasence would impress the cast and crew by performing many of his character's more physical moments, although the actor was also known to tire easily, and Little and his crew went to great lengths to accommodate Pleasence. At one point, the production spent several nights shooting outside sequences, and Pleasence wore an old snap cap to help keep himself warm. The crew was so exhausted by this stage of production that no one noticed, including Pleasence himself, that he had failed to remove the hat during filming, ultimately resulting in over 6 hours of wasted footage. Pleasence, always a true professional, delivers a fun and lively performance in his reprising of Dr. Samuel Loomis. His presence certainly elevates the film as a whole and also allows it to feel more at home in the world of the first 2 films. Kathleen Kinmont plays Rachel's saucy competition, Kelly Meeker, and primarily had a background in cheesy 80s sexploitation films like Hard Bodies, Fraternity Vacation, and of course, Phoenix the Warrior. And while she has maintained a consistent acting career since the film, she hasn't managed to be a part of anything with quite the staying power of Halloween 4. Well, maybe Bride of Reanimator.
West, you stupid biped!
Sasha Jensen plays Brady, the center of the film's love triangle, and came from a growing background in film as both an actor and stuntman. Jensen also wasn't new to the horror genre, having appeared in Ghoulies 2 the year prior, and would go on to make multiple appearances in other genre films, including Deadly Weapon, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and The Unnameable 2, as well as landing a role in Richard Linklater's seminal 1993 coming-of-age tale, Dazed and Confused. Veteran actor Beau Starr had found success as a television character actor before landing the role of Sheriff Ben Meeker, Kelly Meeker's father, which he would reprise in Halloween 5. The actor would also go on to have a brief role in Martin Scorsese's award-winning 1990 gangster masterpiece Goodfellas as Henry Hill's father. It's asking a lot of any child actor to take on such an intense role in a horror film, but Danielle Harris was clearly up for the challenge, giving a surprisingly mature and emotional performance as Jamie Lloyd, the apple of Michael's eye. The character would go on to be a major player in the next 2 Halloween installments, although Harris would only portray Laurie's tortured offspring one other time. However, Harris would later make a return to the Halloween franchise, playing the role of Laurie's best friend Annie Brackett in director Rob Zombie's 2007 and 2009 remakes. Composer Alan Howarth, who had co-written the music for both Halloween 2 and 3 alongside John Carpenter, would return for the franchise's 4th installment, and was eager for the opportunity to make the music all his own. Filmed at Pie West Electronic Music Studio in Glendale, California, Howarth's score leaned more into the atmospheric rather than something melodic, creating an unsettling and eerie sound for the film. The score also relies more heavily on the use of synthesizers, and Howarth utilizes Carpenter's famous theme only sparingly. Howarth's music would see an official soundtrack release from Varese Sarabande in September 1988, 1 month ahead of the film's debut. The soundtrack would later see a limited expanded edition released in 2011 via Alan Howarth Incorporated, the original release only featuring 11 of the film's 15 total tracks. Little and the producers screened Halloween 4 for multiple test audiences, most early viewers criticizing the film for its lack of blood and gore. Although only a short 7 years had passed, the horror genre had changed dramatically since 1981's Halloween 2, audiences now demanding more shock value from the genre. Little had done his best to accomplish a more subdued sense of terror for the film, as the original had featured little in the way of blood splatter, wanting the film to feel more like a mystery thriller rather than a, quote, axe in the forehead kind of movie. Nevertheless, Mustafa Akkad asked Little and his cinematographer to add slightly more edge to the film and shoot additional segments of Michael in action. However, Akkad despised violence and the use of blood in cinema, and insisted that Little and his team avoid using as much of the substance as possible. Little and a small crew filmed several new shots and sequences of Michael's mayhem in a small studio in Los Angeles, not having the funds necessary to travel back to Utah. One of the scenes added following the audience test screenings would be Michael's attack on the ambulance team during his opening escape, the filmmakers originally intending just to show the aftermath of the attack. This, of course, includes the now famous thumb through the forehead shot, the filmmaker simply using a mechanical hand with a retractable thumb to accomplish the gruesome effect. The dummy hand used in this shot, and it is obvious, as well as the bloody wound created when Michael attacks one of the vigilante locals, was designed by special effects makeup artist John Carl Buechler, who had also directed Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, released in May of that year. As the reshoots went on, Akkad himself was reported to have demanded the use of even more blood, as the filmmakers slowly realized that the shocking additions enhanced the experience for the audience.
No one has forgotten his name. And Halloween has never been the same.
Oh, God! Who's gonna be next?
Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
Released in over 1,600 theaters on October 21st, 1988, the film grossed over $6.8 million in its opening weekend, beating out holdovers The Accused and Alien Nation for the top spot at the US box office, which it would hold for 2 consecutive weeks. With a $5 million budget, the film went on to gross over $17 million at the North American box office, making it the 3rd highest earning entry in the franchise up to that point, and today stands as the 5th most successful film of the series. However, at the time, it wasn't viewed as a resounding success, grossing 30% less than Halloween 2, which had been made on half the budget, and Halloween 4 ultimately falling short of other slasher franchise installments released that same year, including Friday the 13th: The New Blood, which grossed $19 million, and A Nightmare on Elm Street 4: Dream Master, taking in over $49 million in its 1988 run. The film received mostly negative critical reviews, although many fans praised director Dwight Little's restoration of the original storyline, and of course, the rebirth of Michael. Today, the film holds a 30% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 34 out of 100 on Metacritic, with around 30 reviews counted each. Many critics disliked the more violent superhuman rendition of Michael, and also felt the film lacked artistic vision, many chalking it up to a cheap imitation. As a marketing tie-in, Mustafa Akkad and Trancas International Films ordered a 224-page novelization of the film from author and screenwriter Nicholas Grabowski, published on October 1st, 1988 by Guild Press. However, the first edition of the novel lacked many details Grabowski was forced to remove, including a deleted epilogue, and in 2003, the novel saw a reissue titled Halloween 4: The Special Limited Edition, featuring the restored content and new cover art. As of 2019, the novelization is out of print and can only be found through used book retailers for a hefty price tag. Halloween 4 has seen multiple home media releases over the decades, its first US release being in May 1989 as a rental-only VHS cassette tape from CBS Fox Home Entertainment. Later that same year, the VHS release was made available for purchase in order to coincide with the October release of Halloween 5. UK audiences would have to wait until the early 1990s for their VHS release from Brave World Video, and in the summer of 2002, Digital Entertainment distributed a re-release of that VHS, with a separate widescreen edition being released later that year. Also in 2002, Anchor Bay Entertainment released the film for the first time on DVD in a special edition UK release, also seeing a near simultaneous DVD release from Digital Entertainment, and later being released in the US in 2006. The DVD consisted of several special features, including a behind-the-scenes documentary and commentaries from actors Danielle Harris and Ellie Cornell, as well as a track featuring screenwriter Alan B. McElroy. The home media distribution rights for the film would eventually settle with Anchor Bay, the company producing several DVD combo packs and providing yet another solo DVD release in 2010, this time only offering the trailer and a short featurette. The film saw its first Blu-ray release in the US and Germany in 2012, featuring new Dolby True HD 5.1 audio and offering new special features which included commentaries from director Dwight H. Little, as well as again featuring commentaries from Danielle Harris and Ellie Cornell. In September 2014, the film again saw a special edition Blu-ray release from Anchor Bay, partnered with the cult home media distributor Shout Factory under its Scream Factory moniker, as part of their exclusive Halloween Complete Collection box set, featuring new editions of all films. Visually speaking, while the Blu-ray offers an excellent new scan of the film, it unfortunately does not provide much in the way of special features, recycling the same commentaries from the 2012 release, and also contains a factory glitch that causes the audio to become slightly out of sync for about 20 minutes in the middle of the film. With the success of Halloween 4, Mustafa Akkad was eager to move forward with a follow-up. While Dwight Little was asked to return for Halloween 5, the director ultimately chose to decline the opportunity, feeling he had already made the best Halloween sequel he could make, his writing partner Alan B. McElroy also deciding not to return to the franchise. The Halloween 4 filmmakers would later state that they were disappointed with the direction the series was taken in, and never intended for Jamie to become the focus of the story. Halloween 5 and 6, along with Halloween 4, would collectively become known as the Thorn Trilogy among fans, the latter two films introducing the concept of the Curse of Thorn and the secretive druid cult working to fulfill its prophecy. As already mentioned, Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers would see the return of Danielle Harris as Jamie Lloyd, and reveal that Michael survived the assault by police at the climax of Part 4, seeking refuge in a hermit's riverside shack. The story focuses on Jamie's recovery in a mental hospital following the attack on her foster mother, and introduces a telepathic link between her and the Shape. Directed by newcomer Dominique Othenin-Girard, the film was panned by fans and critics alike for its cheap production value and bizarre storyline, deviating from the simplicity of the mythology established in the original film. While Halloween 5 was released only 1 year after its predecessor, the film was far less of a success, and fans would have to wait nearly 6 years to see the concluding chapter of the Thorn storyline. Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers would be released in September 1995, and Danielle Harris would not reprise her role, the character of Jamie Lloyd only appearing briefly in the opening sequence of the film. The story revolves around Jamie giving birth to a prophetic infant that becomes the center of the film's plot, seeing Michael and the Druid cult pursuing the child as part of a larger conspiracy, also bringing back the character of Tommy Doyle, portrayed by Paul Rudd. Donald Pleasence would not only make his last screen appearance as Dr. Samuel Loomis in Halloween 6, but would also deliver the final performance of his career, sadly passing away before the film's release. While the film would prove to be more successful than Halloween 5, Mustafa Akkad felt that the Thorn storyline had run its course, and the series needed to make yet another return to form. The franchise would see a reboot with 1998's Halloween 20 Years Later, or H2O, marking Jamie Lee Curtis's first return to the Halloween universe in her now iconic role, and would essentially retcon the events of Halloween 4 through 6, making it more of a direct sequel to the first two films. In 2018, with the cooperation of director Dwight Little, Universal Studios Orlando and Hollywood introduced the Halloween 4 Maze as part of their annual Halloween Horror Nights attraction, in celebration of the film's 30th anniversary, as well as the 40th anniversary of the original film. The creators painstakingly recreated many of the film's most memorable locations in order to create a truly immersive fan experience. The maze featured a knife-wielding Michael popping out at horror-loving tourists along the way, as well as featuring many homages to other franchise favorites. Unfortunately, while 2018 was deemed the year of the Shape, the attraction was a one-time event, and currently there are no plans to resurrect it. In an era where the slasher genre had devolved to the point of self-parody, Halloween 4 returned audiences to a time when a ghostly face lurking in the shadows could be the thing of nightmares. Yes, the film certainly is not without its faults. The action is at times clunky and stilted, and the film was clearly made on a tight budget and schedule, leading to some sloppiness in its execution and unfortunate mishaps. However, speaking as a fan, I feel that of all the sequels following Part 2, Halloween 4 is perhaps the purest, almost ingenious in the way it manages to both remain faithful to the tone and aesthetic established by the John Carpenter classic, while also breathing new life into the series, offering one of the most shocking endings in horror cinema history. What easily could have been a soulless studio cash grab is elevated by the genuine care and love for the material brought by director Dwight H. Little and writer Alan B. McElroy, the two creatives crafting an unexpected and disturbing tale that expands upon the mythology established by the first two films and taking it to bold new heights. So guys, let me know your thoughts on Halloween 4. Where do you rank it among the other films in the franchise, and were you a fan of the Curse of Thorn storyline? And as always guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and click like below and feel free to share. And if you want to see more videos just like this one, go ahead and click subscribe.
I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight, for my monster from his slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise,
he did the mash.
He did the monster mash.
The monster mash.
It was a graveyard smash.
He did the mash.